Have you ever noticed that some thoughts just keep showing up no matter how much you challenge them? Maybe you know they're irrational. Maybe you've even convinced yourself logically that they aren't true. But they still pop up again and again. And every time they do, they bring a wave of anxiety with them. If that sounds familiar, many people with catastrophic worries say, I know it's irrational, but I just can't stop the thought. Welcome to Quieting Anxiety by Excel at Life. I'm Dr. Monica Frank, and in today's episode, we're going to focus on an advanced cognitive training technique called thought stopping. If you're new to this podcast, I urge you to listen to the episodes in order. They build on one another, and the more advanced techniques we're covering now rely on skills introduced earlier. But before we begin today's episode, let's take a moment to center yourself with a short exercise. Take a slow breath in through your nose and let it out through your mouth. Now notice that thoughts are coming and going, drifting through your mind. Some pass quickly, while others seem to hover. Imagine for a moment that you're standing in a hallway with many doors. Each door represents a thought. Some doors open into rooms filled with fear or self-doubt. Other doors open into rooms of calm, focus, or encouragement. You cannot stop the hallway from existing, and you cannot stop the doors from being there, but you do get to choose which doors to walk through. As another breath comes in and out, remind yourself, I may not choose which thoughts appear, but I can choose which thoughts I give my attention to. Take one more breath, feeling grounded in the knowledge that you can direct your focus. When you're ready, let's begin. Thought stopping is an advanced cognitive tool that is especially useful when you've already challenged a thought and know it isn't true, but the thought keeps intruding into your mind anyway. Here's the problem. Even when you don't believe a thought, its constant recurrence can make it feel powerful. Anxiety doesn't always come from the truth of the thought, but from the frequency of the thought. And sometimes, focusing too much on these recurring thoughts, even in an attempt to analyze them, can actually reinforce them. That's why in certain cases it's better not to give the thought attention at all. That's where thought stopping comes in. But let me make this clear. Thought stopping should not be used with thoughts you still believe or haven't yet challenged. If you use it in those cases, you may be avoiding the real underlying issues. Instead, save this technique for thoughts you know are irrational but still find yourself replaying. Thought stopping doesn't have to be complicated. Let me share a couple of simple methods. One method is the rubber band technique. Wear a rubber band around your wrist, and whenever the thought occurs, give the band a little snap. It doesn't need to hurt, it just needs to be noticeable. The idea is to pair the unwanted thought with a mild aversive stimulus, which is another way of saying a mild punishment, just enough to get your brain's attention. Over time, this trains your brain to disengage from the thought. Now, I want to emphasize this should not be harsh. People with anxiety already feel bad enough about having the thoughts. The purpose is not to punish yourself, but simply to interrupt the thought pattern. In fact, if a rubber band feels too painful, you can use a coated hairband instead. It's less likely to sting, but still noticeable enough to serve as a gentle reminder to stop the thought. Or if you don't want to wear anything on your wrist, you can simply flick your wrist lightly with your fingers or squeeze your fist. The key is to create a small, brief interruption, not pain, just enough to signal your brain to disengage from the thought. Another method is to say the word stop to yourself. You can do this internally or even out loud if you're alone. Sometimes adding a visual cue, like picturing a bright red stop sign, can make it more powerful. It may also help to use your name when you say stop. For example, Monica, stop. Using your own name can be surprisingly effective because you've been conditioned for years to pay attention when someone calls your name. A common mistake is thinking, I should just be able to tell myself to stop and it will work. But like any skill, thought stopping takes practice. The more often you rehearse it, whether with a rubber band, a stop sign image, or saying stop with your name, the more automatic it becomes. Then, when you need it in the moment, it's available to you. Since this is an advanced technique, some people may need additional training to make thought stopping more effective. This is something that can be done with the help of a therapist. In structured training, you would intentionally say the irrational thought out loud, and while you're in the middle of saying it, the therapist firmly says, stop, while making a loud noise, like clapping hands or dropping a book on a hard floor. When I use this method with clients, I usually have them describe a situation and their thoughts out loud. Much of what they say may be factual and reasonable, but as soon as they reach the unwanted or irrational thought, that's when I interrupt, making the loud noise and saying stop forcefully. This helps the brain begin to separate the reasonable, realistic parts of their thinking from the intrusive thought that needs to be stopped. Once this approach is effective, I move to the next step. Instead of saying these thoughts out loud, the client thinks them silently. When the unwanted thought occurs, I instruct them to raise a finger so that I can still provide the interruption with a loud stop. Finally, after repeated practice, the client learns to do the process internally, identifying the thought, telling themselves to stop, and shifting their attention without my external cue. Through many repetitions, your brain learns to associate the intrusive thought with the interruption. Over time, it becomes harder to hold on to the thought. So today, reflect on any thoughts that you might want to use this technique with. However, if you are still having trouble refuting them, use the cognitive diary method you learned previously to help you challenge them. Once you have identified the unwanted thoughts, you can use the methods I just described, or you can use the companion audio, Retraining Your Mind, Thought Stopping Practice, to help you. Remember, it is important that even after you've used the practice method, to continue to tell yourself stop every time the thought occurs. Before we finish, let's return to the hallway of doors we imagined earlier. Each door represents a thought. Some doors lead to encouragement and peace, while others open into worry, fear, or self-criticism. Now imagine that the doors to those unwanted thoughts have a big red stop sign on them. You can see the door, you can notice the sign, but you don't have to go in. Take a slow breath in and silently say to yourself, stop. As you breathe out, imagine yourself turning away from that door, choosing instead to walk toward a door that opens into calm and self-care. With each breath in, remind yourself, I notice the thought, and with each breath out, I choose not to follow it. Take one more slow breath and let it go. As you carry this with you, remember that every thought is a door, but you have the power to stop at the sign and choose which doors you will walk through. So remember, thought stopping is an advanced cognitive tool. Use it when you've already challenged a thought and know it isn't true, but it keeps coming back anyway. With practice, you can train your mind to break the cycle of recurrence and reduce the anxiety those intrusive thoughts bring. As always, be gentle with yourself. You're not trying to punish your mind for having the thought. You're simply retraining it to let it go. Until next time, keep practicing, keep breathing, and keep moving forward.